One of the things that many parents talk to me about is how we can ensure that our kids lead happy, engaged, meaningful lives. In other words, that they're happy. We've now got lots of fantastic information from positive psychology, and of all the segments that I'm going to do for Learning Fever, this, to me, is the most important. So what are the principles that we need to articulate to our children from a very early age to make sure that they live a life well lived? Well, the most important thing from my point of view is to teach them to see life as it is, to be realistic, but to make sure that they focus on the good bits. This means every single night when you're sitting with them, you get them to sit down and tell you what went well for them that day, to literally count their blessings. We know from the research that Sonia Lyubomirsky has done that if you actually sit down and do this on a regular basis, you will be happier 6 weeks later, 12 weeks later, a month later, compared to people who don't do this. And there's a fantastic website that's going to help you out here. It's called Happy Rambles. If you can get your kid to sign up to Happy Rambles, it's a free service. Every night they will receive a message from Happy Rambles as an email asking them just to list 3 things that went well for them on that day. The research says that not only will this make you happier, but it'll actually make you healthier as well. And if you're suffering from a disease, you can find less fatigue, less pain through doing this on a regular basis. It's an amazing piece of psychology. We also have iPhone apps that you can download that help you remember to be grateful for the day that you've had. The great Professor Martin Seligman, in his book Flourish, talks about this as the 3 blessings technique. And he says quite clearly that people who do this are less depressed and happier 3 months later and 6 months later. So this is something that we need to get incorporated into our children's lives from a very early age. The second thing is if you want to feel good, if you want to really feel good about yourself, then you need to do good. The research is amazing. Most of us have heard of the helper's high, the buzz that you get when you do something nice for other people. But did you know that when we study volunteers, not only do they live longer, but they're much happier than people who don't do any volunteering at all. So you need to get your kid into the business of helping other people. Perhaps you can get them to do some work in the garden for an elderly neighbour. Perhaps you can get them to work for a charity. Start them young, you'll never regret it. Of all the important pieces of information, this is possibly the most important you could give to any young person. And that is, we need to teach them from a very early age that if you can't change something, you can always change the way you think about it. Now, a really basic example for this would be, let's say they've just bought some new runners and they go running in the park and they step in some dog poo. There's 2 ways they can think about this. One is, I've ruined my shoes, I'm going to smell all day and my day is just gone and I'm going to be in a bad mood all day. Or the moment they step in the dog poo, they could think, at least I was wearing shoes. So there are 2 different ways you can think. Now that's a rather silly example, but if we can get kids to have flexible, non-self-defeating thinking, then we're really setting them up for the rest of their lives to manage virtually any circumstance that they come across. The other thing is getting kids into the habit of thanking mentors. What the research tells us is that actually writing a letter thanking someone who's helped us along the way will in fact immediately give us a boost. You have to keep doing this, but getting kids into the habit of thanking people who've given them a leg up, who've helped them during the day, very, very important. I used to get my children at the end of the school year to write a letter of thanks to a teacher who they felt had helped them. The other couple of things, there's more to life when you stop and notice. Getting kids to push the pause button on the DVD of their life, to not be in such a rush. Point out to them a rainbow if you see one. point out to them a beautiful sunset or a beautiful sunrise, or even get them to stop and smell a rose. The trouble today is that kids are working far too fast. We need just to get them to slow down a bit, because what we find is people who do are far happier than people who don't. The other issue is around friendships. Professor Martin Seligman was asked once, what's the main difference between happy people and unhappy people? And he said that happy people have a rich repertoire of friends. Teaching your child to obtain, maintain, and retain friendships is incredibly important and will set them up for a happy life way after you've gone. We also need to teach young people how to relax and to sleep and to basically exercise. This is incredibly important in terms of oxygenating their brain. Probably the most important component are the exercise and the sleep part. What we've got to do is get young people to realise that sleep is one of the most important study tools going around. In sleep, we know that young people require somewhere between 8.25 and 9.25 hours a day in order for their brains to replenish, in order for them to process the information they've learnt at school. They really do need to have a good night's sleep. So you make that a priority. Set a bedtime when they're young and stick to it. One of the other things we've discovered about what makes people happy is when they lose themselves in something that they love. I'm sure all of you have been reading a book sometime, been watching a movie or perhaps a TV show you really enjoyed, and you got so caught up in it that time passed very quickly. This is a state we call flow, and it's very, very important that you try and get kids into things that they love and encourage them to be in flow. The trick, of course, for the rest of their lives will be to find out what it is they like doing and then helping them design their lives so that every single day for the rest of their lives they spend at least some of that time in flow. The other issue is to give them that sense of meaning. What we've discovered is that those young people who have a sense of connectedness or relatedness to something that they love doing, to feel part of something bigger than themselves, are far happier than those who just are constantly doing stuff for themselves. So where do we find meaning and purpose? You can get that from religion, from faith, from being part of a political or environmental movement, or doing something so meaningful that it actually makes a difference. Other people find meaning through experiences, often difficult ones, through reflection, sometimes from loving and being loved, while others find meaning just from the way they choose to approach other people and live in the world around them.